Hello friends, welcome to the Night Watchman channel. Today I'm going to tell you a terrifying and thrilling creepy horror story that will make you feel the chill of fear. If you enjoy my story, don't forget to like and subscribe so I can feel your love and support through your likes and subscriptions. I was 20 when I thought things were finally looking up for me. Not great, not perfect, just steady. After a year of drifting through odd jobs, sleeping on couches, and wondering how long I could stretch 20 bucks, I'd finally found something that felt like progress. See, after high school, college wasn't even a thought. My grades were average, my family broke, and I wasn't the type who could sit through lectures while bills piled up at home. My mom worked housekeeping at a small-town motel. My stepdad had disappeared 2 winters ago, chasing a job that never existed. It was just me and her in a rented duplex on the edge of Brookhaven, Ohio, where the only thing louder than the trains at night were the arguments through thin walls. So when I got hired at Brookhaven Fuel Stop and Market, I treated it like a real step forward. The place was small, 2 gas pumps, a convenience store that smelled like burnt coffee and bleach, and a flickering neon sign that buzzed even in daylight. But it was official. Paperwork, payroll, an actual paycheck with my name on it. The manager, Lynn, was this no-nonsense woman in her 40s who'd been there long enough to know everyone's vices. Her hair was always pulled into a messy ponytail, and she had a permanent coffee mug in her hand that said "World's Okayest Boss." The first day I clocked in, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "Eli, I don't care if you move slow or don't smile. Just don't steal from me. Don't get high on the job and show up when you're supposed to. You do that, we're good, fair enough." The shifts were split into 3 parts. Morning, 6 a.m., 2 p.m. Farmers, truckers, early commuters. Evening, 2 p.m., 10 p.m. Families, kids buying snacks, after-work drunks. Graveyard, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The shift nobody wanted. During graveyard, the doors stayed locked. You sold everything through a sliding drawer under a bulletproof glass window. It wasn't paranoia. Brookhaven was the kind of place where meth labs and cornfields existed side by side. At first, I told Lynn I'd take any shift except the graveyard. She laughed and said, "That's what everyone says until someone quits." And of course, someone did. It was a humid July evening when Lynn pulled me into the back office, a cramped room that doubled as storage. "Eli," she started, rubbing her temples, "Trevor just walked out mid-shift last night. Left a note that says, 'Can't take it anymore. You're the only one I trust not to run off. It's overtime pay.'" Just for the week, I hesitated. My first instinct was to say no. Graveyard meant dealing with tweakers, drunks, maybe worse. But then I thought about my mom's overdue electric bill sitting on our kitchen table. "All right," I said, "I'll cover it." "Good man," Lynn said. "And Eli, keep the drawer locked, always. No exceptions." The first few nights were uneventful, mostly truckers buying coffee, a few sketchy guys asking for cigarettes, and the occasional stray cat wandering the lot. I brought headphones, listened to old rock playlists, and survived on stale donuts and bad coffee. But the 4th night was different. That evening started quiet. I'd clocked in for my usual 2 p.m., 10 p.m. shift and agreed to cover graveyard when the new kid called in sick. By 9:30, the sun dipped below the trees and the sky turned that deep blue that makes you feel like you're underwater. I cleaned the counters, restocked the soda fridge, and told myself it'd be fine. When the last customer left at 10:05, I locked the doors, flipped the sign to closed, and switched the lights to the graveyard mode. Dim inside, bright outside. The buzzing fluorescent canopy made the pavement look like it was sweating. Around midnight, business died completely. Not a single car for miles, just the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the roof. Then at 12:47, I saw headlights. A Chevy Silverado, maybe early 2000s, roared into the lot too fast, tires crunching over gravel. It jerked to a stop at pump 3. For a second, I thought it was just another drunk trying to sober up before heading home. But then the engine stayed running. No one got out. I stared through the glass. He didn't go to the pump faster. He walked straight toward the driver's door open, pressed his hand flat against the glass, mid-30s maybe, stood there staring at me. With dirty jeans and a gray flannel shirt, I called out, pointing toward the service window. His boots were caked in mud. You gotta use the drawer. His hair a mess. Stores closed inside. Under the harsh white lights, he didn't move, didn't blink. Pale. After a few seconds, he tilted his head, pupils blown slowly, like he'd been up for days. He was studying me. Listen, I swear I don't. Smiling faintly, you calling me a liar? He shuffled over to the side window, voice cracking. When he leaned close, the smell hit me. I stepped back from the window. Alcohol mixed with something hand hovered near the panic button under the counter. You're not for a moment. Neither of us spoke. He said quietly. Then, without warning, my throat went dry again. All right, he muttered. Trevor doesn't work here anymore. Guess I'll just fill up first. The man's lips heading twitched into a grin. Relieved, I let out a shaky breath. He always said he'd leave something for me. But instead of the usual beep of fuel starting, hollow sound, I heard the bag, of course. You got it. When I glanced out, my stomach dropped. That's when I understood. He wasn't pumping drugs. He was standing by the pump, out of the station, tilting the nozzle over himself. Look, man, I said, keeping my gasoline splashed across his shirt. I don't know what you're talking about. His hair, I just work here. He was soaking in it. His eyes narrowed. I slammed the emergency shut-off switch. He tapped killing the pump's dirty fingernail against the glass. Hey, stop! I shouted through the glass. Tap. Stop that! You got it. He turned toward me. Dripping, he said smiling, it'd be waiting. In his hand, brown a silver Zippo lighter. Back room. Tell Trevor I found my ears, he said softly, then flicked it open. Flame burst to life. He screamed. But it wasn't pain, it was laughter. A horrible, guttural sound that rose above the crackling fire. His body turned into a living torch, staggering toward the front doors. Each thud of his boots left burning footprints on the concrete. I hit the panic button, grabbed the fire extinguisher, but there was nothing I could do. He collapsed near the entrance, fire curling up his arms, melting flesh from bone. Sirens wailed in the distance. By the time cops and firefighters arrived, it was too late. They smothered what was left of him, and the smell, burned fuel, burned skin, hung in the air thick as tar. When they loaded his body into the ambulance, I saw his face for just a second, charred black, mouth still stretched into a grin. The police questioned me for hours. Turns out the guy's name was Dale Riker, a known meth addict with a record for assault and arson. He'd been looking for Trevor, who'd been supplying him out the back. They said Dale died instantly, but I didn't believe that. Because 2 nights later, I drove past the station, closed off, yellow tape fluttering in the wind, and I swear I saw him. A dark, dripping figure standing under the canopy at Pump 3, head tilted, grinning. Story 2. I still remember the smell of burnt rubber that night, the sharp, bitter scent that clings to your clothes and won't wash out no matter how hard you try. It's strange, the things that stay with you. Not the headlines, not the police reports, not even the nightmares. It's the small details. The smell of asphalt after rain, the hum of a flickering light, the way silence can feel heavier than sound. I was 31 when it happened. Back then, I was living in Mesa Ridge, Arizona, a forgotten town pressed between the desert and the highway. You could drive through it in 10 minutes and never realize you'd passed civilization. After leaving the U.S. Army Military Police Corps, I told myself I was ready for peace, ready for something that didn't involve checkpoints or sirens. But peace is harder than war. Nobody tells you that. When you spend years living on alert, eating fast, sleeping light, reacting before thinking, civilian life feels like a different planet. Every door you walk through, you check exits. Every stranger's face, you read for threat. I thought a simple job might help me blend back into the world, so I took a position with a nighttime delivery company out of Tucson. Not glamorous, but it was steady. I drove cargo vans across state lines, hauling parts and paperwork for factories, sometimes medical supplies. The hours were long, but the roads were quiet. Miles of desert, broken only by the occasional truck stop or gas station glowing in the dark. I told myself I liked it that way. Less noise, less thinking. But solitude can twist on you. It can make you start hearing things in the hum of the tires, seeing faces in the rearview mirror when there's nothing there. That Friday, August 9th, 2021, the heat had been punishing all day, the kind that makes the sky look like white fire and turns the steering wheel into a branding iron. I'd left Tucson just after noon, dropped my last delivery near Las Cruces, and started heading home well past midnight. My eyes burned. My water bottle was empty. I figured I'd stop for gas and caffeine before the last stretch. That's how I ended up at Desert View, Gas and Deli, mile marker 143, just off Route 62. A place I'd stopped at before, once or twice. It sat alone. One main building, two pumps, a flickering red sign half-lit with dead letters. It wasn't the kind of place you notice unless you have to. The clock on the dash read 2:37 a.m. when I pulled in. The lot was empty, save for a busted blue pickup parked near the dumpsters. One of its doors hung slightly open. I killed the engine, stepped out into the heat that never really leaves the desert, even at night. Inside, the air conditioning fought a losing battle. The overhead lights buzzed like angry insects. A woman stood behind the counter, mid-40s maybe, hair tied up, the kind of tired that lives behind the eyes. Her name tag said Laura. "Evening," she said as I came in. "Barely," I muttered, managing half a smile. "You got any of those black canned coffees, the strong ones?" "Second fridge from the left," she said, voice dry. "If you can find one that's cold, it's your lucky night." I grabbed the last can, tossed a protein bar on the counter too. She scanned them, yawned. "You truckers don't sleep, huh?" "Not when there's bills," I said. She chuckled, weakly. As she handed me the receipt, I noticed something. A flash of motion through the glass doors. Just a flicker, like someone moving past the pumps. "Place always this dead?" I asked. "Most nights," she said, "except when the tweakers wander through." "You learn to lock up fast." I laughed softly, but my shoulders tightened. "Yeah. Guess that's the world now." I stepped outside again, cracked the coffee, and leaned against the van. The desert stretched around me. Black sky, endless sand, the faint glow of the highway far in the distance. For a moment, it was peaceful. Then I heard it. A sound, not loud, not distinct, just a footstep, crunching gravel near the back of the building. My hand instinctively went to the knife clipped to my belt. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe Laura's coworker taking out trash. Maybe that blue pickup's owner finally showing up. But when I glanced toward the corner of the building, I saw him. A man standing halfway in shadow, halfway in the wash of the overhead light. Tall, thin, wearing what looked like a dark hoodie despite the heat. His posture was wrong, too still, like he was waiting for something. "Hey," I called. "You all right there?" He didn't move, didn't answer, just stared. I took a few steps forward, slow. "You need help or something?" He tilted his head slightly. Just that small, jerky motion, and then a grin spread across his face. It wasn't wide. It wasn't even human in the way it stretched, like his skin was remembering how to smile, but his mind hadn't caught up. My stomach nodded. "Okay," I muttered, backing toward my van. "Take care of yourself, man." When I got in, I locked the doors. My pulse pounded in my ears. Through the windshield, I watched him take a few steps closer to the pumps. Still grinning. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out. Everything drowned in black. For a heartbeat, I froze, hand on the ignition, eyes straining against the dark. The only light came from the dim glow of my dashboard. Then, bang. A hand slammed against my window. I flinched back, adrenaline spiking. The man's face pressed against the glass, eyes wild, mouth moving, muttering something I couldn't hear. "Back off!" I shouted, fumbling for my seatbelt. The door handle jerked, locked. Thank God. But then, he stopped. His head tilted again, just slightly, and that same grin crawled back across his face before he vanished into the dark. I turned the key, engine roaring to life. My headlights cut through the black, catching dust and sand. But no man. For a moment, I almost convinced myself it was just exhaustion, just some drunk drifter screwing around. But then I saw it, on the passenger side door. A smear, bloody fingerprints. Fresh, I threw the van into gear, gunned it out of the lot. My hands shook on the wheel. The road blurred. I checked the mirrors again and again, every pair of headlights behind me, making my chest seize. After 5 miles, I saw flashing lights ahead, a sheriff's cruiser blocking the road. I slowed, rolled down the window. The deputy, a heavy-set guy, mid-50s, stepped out. "Evening." "Sorry, road's closed ahead. Accident cleanup. You headed east?" "Yeah," I said, voice trembling despite my best effort. "Just came from the gas station back there. There's a guy, somebody tried to..." He frowned. "Gas station?" You mean Desert View? Yeah, he scratched his chin. Son, that place shut down 2 years ago. Burned out after a robbery. I stared at him. No, it's open. There's a woman working there. Laura, I just talked to her. He shook his head slowly. I was on that call. Woman named Laura Dennison. Worked nights there. Poor soul didn't make it out when the fire started. They never caught who did it. I felt my throat close. No, you don't understand, I said. He raised a hand gently. Why don't you step out of the vehicle for a second, son? I didn't move. Couldn't. My hands tightened on the wheel. In the rear-view mirror for just one impossible second, I saw movement. Someone sitting in the back seat. Just a shape, still grinning. Son, the deputy said again, his voice faint now, distant. I blinked, and the seat was empty. When I finally turned back toward him, I realized he was holding his flashlight scanning the inside of the van. His expression changed. You all right? I think I need to go, I whispered. He sighed. Long night, huh? Pull over at the rest, stop up ahead. Catch some sleep. It'll pass. I nodded numbly, rolled up the window and drove. I didn't stop at the rest area. I didn't stop anywhere. I drove until dawn painted the horizon pink and gold. When I finally pulled over, the sun was rising behind the mountains, and on my dashboard, resting neatly beside the empty coffee can, was a small silver lighter. It was scorched, the metal warped, but the engraving was still clear. LD. That was 3 years ago. Since then, I don't take night routes. I don't stop for gas after dark. I moved to a different town, different job, different everything. But some nights when I'm driving past a stretch of desert, I see a red flicker on the horizon, half a sign still buzzing. And I swear, if I look long enough, I can see her, standing by the counter, tired eyes watching the door, waiting for someone to finish the story she never got to. Hello friends, I hope you're enjoying this story. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please hit the subscribe button so you can get a new story every day. Story 3, I never thought that working at a gas station would be the thing that taught me how fragile people really are, including myself. When I took the night shift job at Route 19, Gas and Go, I wasn't looking for excitement or danger. I just needed money. After my dad passed from a stroke the year before, the medical bills buried my mom and me faster than grief ever could. College didn't feel right after that. I dropped out, packed what little I owned, and drove from Flagstaff down to Prescott, Arizona, a small desert town that felt both alive and dead at the same time. I was 24, broke, and barely holding my head above water. The gas station was the only place that would take me without experience, background checks or questions. It was one of those 24-hour stops off a quiet stretch of highway. One register, 4 pumps, and a flickering sign that buzzed all night like a dying insect. The manager, Tom, was an older guy with a gut and a nicotine habit that probably predated me. He was nice enough, but he didn't care much for small talk. Keep the coffee hot, the floors dry, and the doors locked after midnight, he told me on my first night. Other than that, you're on your own. I didn't mind. The night shift suited me. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that wraps around you like a blanket. Some nights I'd lean against the counter, reading old paperbacks while the hum of the coolers filled the silence. Other nights I'd stare out the glass doors at the empty highway, the neon light painting the asphalt blue. Most nights were harmless, drifters, truckers, and locals coming in for cigarettes or cheap coffee. But every once in a while, you'd get someone who didn't fit, someone whose energy made the air in the room feel wrong. The night it happened, the air already felt strange, like the whole town was holding its breath. It was late November, the desert cold biting harder than usual. The clock over the counter read 12:41 a.m., and I was halfway through refilling the napkin dispensers when the bell over the door jingled. A man walked in. He was tall, maybe 6'3", with sharp shoulders that seemed to jut out of his gray sweatshirt like coat hangers. His face was pale, the kind of pale that looked wrong in Arizona. His hands were shoved deep in his pockets, and his eyes darted around the store like he was counting exits. "Evening," I said automatically. No reply. He just nodded slightly and kept walking toward the back, near the restrooms. Now that wasn't exactly unusual. A lot of people used our bathroom and left without buying anything. Still, something about this guy made me stop what I was doing. His walk was off. Not drunk, not high, but deliberate. Like he was trying to act normal and couldn't quite remember how. I glanced at the security monitor. The camera above the bathroom showed him standing still for a second outside the door, like he was listening. Then he went in. I tried to shake it off. I'd seen worse. There was one time a drunk woman fell asleep in the women's stall, and another when some kid spray-painted "The end is near" across the mirror in black marker. Weird was normal here. 10 minutes passed, then 15. When the restroom door finally opened, he came back out, but something had changed. His hood was still up, but his face looked flushed, his breathing uneven. He walked up to the counter slowly, eyes flicking to the security camera above me. "Hey," he said, voice tight. I think I messed up your bathroom." I forced a polite smile. "That's okay." "Happens all the time?" He shook his head too fast. "No, you don't get it. It's bad. I clogged it. I'll fix it, though. You got a plunger or something?" His tone was too eager, desperate even. My stomach twisted. "It's fine," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I'll take care of it." "Please," he said, taking a step forward. "I don't want to leave it like that." "Just let me." I said I'll handle it. His mouth twitched. For a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Irritation or maybe excitement. Then it was gone. He smiled, thin and wrong. "All right, suit yourself." I walked toward the supply closet by the back hall, pretending like this was just another shift. But I could hear his footsteps behind me, slow, dragging just enough to make the hair on my arms stand up. When I reached the door to the men's room, I pushed it open just enough to peek inside. At first it looked fine. Then I saw it. The toilet was stuffed with paper towels not used. Just wadded up, jammed into the bowl so tightly it looked deliberate. The sink was running, water spilling onto the tile. I turned back toward the counter and froze. He was standing closer than before, right at the end of the hallway, just watching me. "You weren't kidding," I said, trying to sound casual. He tilted his head. "Told you it was bad." I took a cautious step back. "I'll deal with it later." He smiled again, wider this time. "You sure you don't need help?" The way he said it sent a jolt down my spine. I tightened my grip on the plunger. "No thanks." Silence. The hum of the lights buzzed between us. Then, as if flipping a switch, he turned around and walked back toward the coolers. He grabbed a soda from the fridge, then came to the counter. "That'll be $2.50, I said, voice shaky. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a crumpled bill, and slid it across the counter. His hand brushed mine, cold, almost clammy. "You should lock your doors after midnight," he said quietly. I froze. "They are locked." He smiled again, that same hollow expression. "No, they're not." I glanced toward the front. The deadbolt was still turned open. I must have forgotten after a customer left earlier. My chest tightened. He turned and walked out, his sneakers squeaking against the tile. The bell above the door jingled once, then silence. For a long minute, I didn't move. Then I locked the door, double-checked the back exit, and called Tom. No answer. His voicemail clicked on. "Hey, it's Liam," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Some guy came in acting weird. You might want to check the cameras when you get in." I hung up. The next 3 hours crawled by. Every time a car passed on the highway, I flinched. Every creak, every shift in the air made me think he was back. At 4 a.m., I went to restock the cooler. The air was freezing back there, and the hum of the compressor drowned out everything else. I pulled open a case of bottled water, and that's when I noticed it. The back door latch was open, just slightly. I could have sworn I'd locked it earlier. I closed it, heart pounding, and turned to head back up front. The store was empty. Still, that heavy feeling hung in the air, like someone had just been there. By sunrise, I was shaking so badly I could barely count the till. Tom showed up right on time, coffee in hand, oblivious. "You look like hell," he said. "There was a guy," I said. "Tall, gray hoodie. Tried to get me into the bathroom. Said he messed it up, but it looked off." Tom frowned. "We'll check the tapes." He did. A few hours later, he called me. "Camera by the restroom's dead," he said flatly. "Footage cuts out for 20 minutes, right when you said he was there." "Cuts out?" I repeated. "Yeah, never seen that before." He paused. "Oh, and the police stopped by earlier. Said some liquor store down the road got broken into around 1 last night. Clerk said the guy had on a gray hoodie." My stomach dropped. That night, I brought a can of pepper spray and kept it under the register. I told myself it was just precaution, that it was over. But 2 nights later, I found a folded napkin tucked under the glass of the counter. It hadn't been there when I started my shift. 4 words scrawled in shaky handwriting. "You should have let me help." I called the cops, but there was no footage. Again, the camera above the counter had gone out for exactly 5 minutes that night. They never found him. Months later, I quit and moved out of Prescott. But every time I stop for gas on a lonely stretch of highway, I still catch myself checking the mirrors, listening for footsteps that aren't there. And I still lock the bathroom door from the outside. Because some people don't just pass through your life. They wait, they watch, and if you're not careful, they follow. Story 4. I never thought my life would hit pause at a gas station in the middle of the desert, but that's exactly what happened. My name's Caleb Warren, I'm 24, and for the past 3 years, I've been working nights at a Chevron station off Route 89, about 10 miles outside a small Arizona town called Red Rock. It wasn't supposed to be my forever. After high school, I had plans. Community college first, maybe a transfer to ASU later, get into environmental engineering. My mom used to call me her fixer because I always wanted to fix things. Broken fences, old radios, even people. But then my dad's truck accident changed everything. He survived, but barely. 2 surgeries, months of rehab, and debt that seemed to multiply like roaches. Mom started working double shifts at the diner, and I dropped out after 1 semester to help cover the bills. That was 3 years ago. Now my days blurred together like oil smears on the window. Sleep until 2 p.m., drive 20 minutes down a long, cracked road that baked in the sun all day, and clock in before the evening shift. Nights at Chevron were quiet, too quiet sometimes. The hum of coolers, the buzz of fluorescent lights, the low radio static from the old FM system. My coworker, Renee Porter, was the only person who made the nights tolerable. She was in her early 30s, a mom of 1, sharp-tongued but kind-hearted. She'd been at the station for almost 7 years and always claimed she stayed because it was peaceful. Peaceful wasn't the word I'd use. That Friday in July started like every other. I clocked in at 4 p.m. sharp, swapped small talk with Renee, and took over the counter. The sun bled orange over the desert hills, heat rising from the asphalt like ghosts. Renee was finishing the day shift, counting the register, while I brewed a new pot of coffee. "You ever think about getting out of here?" she asked suddenly, without looking up from the cash drawer. I laughed. "Every damn night." "Then why don't you?" "Because rent doesn't pay itself." She smiled, sad and knowing. "You're too young to rot under these lights, Caleb." I shrugged, pouring the stale coffee into the drain. "Guess I'm still waiting for something to change." "Things don't change by waiting," she said, handing me the keys. "They change when you leave." When she walked out, I watched her taillights disappear into the dark, and for a brief second, I thought about quitting, just driving until the road ran out. But I didn't, because people like me don't just leave, we stay. By 9:45 p.m., the world outside had gone still. The desert night carried a strange kind of silence, heavy like it was listening. Moths clung to the windows. The lights flickered now and then, just enough to make you glance up. At 10:03, the bell above the door jingled. A trucker came in, middle-aged, sunburned, sweat on his neck, the smell of diesel clinging to him. He bought jerky, a Red Bull, and a scratch ticket, made small talk about the weather, scratched the ticket right there on the counter, lost, and muttered a curse before walking out. Then silence again. 10:40 p.m. rolled around. I was restocking shelves, earbuds in, listening to a podcast about missing persons. That's when I heard it, the crunch of tires on gravel, slow, hesitant. I looked up through the window, a gray Chevy Caprice, late 80s maybe, rolled up to pump 2. The headlights flickered weakly before dying out completely. The car just sat there, engine off like it had given up. At first, I didn't think much of it. People broke down all the time on that stretch. But after a full minute with no one stepping out, I started to feel off. The driver's silhouette was there, still, motionless. I pushed open the door, the bell ringing in the quiet. The desert air was cooler now, carrying the faint scent of rain that never came. "Evening," I called out. "You all right out there?" Nothing. The man didn't move, just stared straight ahead. His hands were gripping the wheel like he was bracing for impact. "Hey," I said, taking a few steps closer. "You need a tow?" "We got a guy in town." That's when his head turned, too fast. He looked at me through the open window, and I swear I've never seen eyes like that. Bloodshot, hollow, almost shaking. His face was grayish like he'd been sick for weeks. "I'm fine," he said. His voice was flat, dead quiet. I hesitated. "Okay, just making sure." He didn't respond, didn't blink. His stare lingered too long. As I started backing up, my flashlight swept across the back seat. That's when I saw it. Something under a black tarp, lumpy, still, and sticking out from underneath. A hand, small, pale, fingers curled inward like it was reaching for something. My mouth went dry. I told myself it was fake, maybe a doll or mannequin, but deep down I knew better. The skin looked too real. "Hey, sir?" My voice came out shaky. "What's that in the back?" His jaw tightened. "Mind your business." The words hit like a punch. "Look, man, if someone's hurt, I can call for—" I said, "Mind your business." His voice dropped an octave, cold, threatening. I froze, heart hammering. The air felt thick. For a long second, we just stared at each other. Then he turned back toward the wheel, hands gripping tighter. I stepped backwards slowly, keeping my eyes on him. The second I was through the door, I locked it and grabbed the phone. 911, what's your emergency?" "This is Caleb Warren. I'm at the Chevron off Route 89 near Red Rock. There's a guy outside. He's got a car with— I think there's a kid in the back. He told me to mind my business, but something's really wrong." The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional. "Can you describe the vehicle?" "Gray Chevy Caprice, old model, rust on the fenders. Plate starts with H3N, hold on dash. The phone trembled in my hand. I peeked out the window. The man was still there, but his head was tilted now like he was listening. Then he looked straight at the store, straight at me. "I think he knows I called," I whispered. "Stay inside." "Officers are on the way." I set the phone down, but didn't hang up. My pulse thudded in my ears. 2 minutes later, though it felt like hours, I saw headlights. Sheriff's vehicles pulling in quietly, lights off. Relief flooded me. The man saw them too. His door flew open. He bolted. He sprinted across the lot and into the desert scrub behind the station. One deputy shouted, "Wah, stop!" and gave chase. The other ran to the car. I pressed to the glass, breath fogging it up, as the deputy yanked open the back door and pulled away the tarp. A boy, maybe 6 or 7, pale, barely breathing, but alive. "Got a live one," the deputy shouted into his radio. "Need EMS now." The desert exploded with motion, sirens, shouts, flashlights slicing through the dark. They caught the man near the fence line, dragging him down, screaming and kicking like a wild animal. He didn't say a word, just kept his eyes locked on the station, on me. I'll never forget that stare. They cuffed him and hauled him away. The boy was airlifted out. Later, I found out he'd been missing for 3 days from a town 70 miles north. The parents had been on the news begging for help. The sheriff told me I probably saved the kid's life. Reporters came by the next day wanting quotes. I didn't give any, because something about that night wouldn't let go. Every night since, I've been replaying it in my head. The headlights flickering, the man's voice, the hand under that tarp. But what haunts me most is the look he gave me when they dragged him away. It wasn't anger, it was recognition, like he knew me. 2 weeks later, the station got new night cameras installed. Corporate policy. I didn't think much of it until the first playback. It was a Tuesday night, slow shift. I was restocking shelves and flipped the monitor over to the live feed just to kill time. I froze. Feed 1, pump 2, empty, feed 2, cashier counter, me, feed 3, outside view of the lot, and there for just a second, behind the pumps, someone standing, still as stone, watching. I ran outside, flashlight cutting through the dark. Nothing, just wind. But on the asphalt near pump 2, there were footprints, fresh. The sheriff said it was probably nothing. Your nerves are just fried, son. But I knew better, because every night after that, the cameras caught the same thing. A shape, a shadow, standing just outside the light, always by pump 2, sometimes closer, and once, God help me, right at the glass door. The face was blurred, but those eyes, I knew those eyes. He's still out there. And some nights, when the wind rattles the windows just right, I swear I can hear his voice whispering through the hum of the lights. Mind your business. Story 5. I never planned on ending up behind a counter at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. Nobody does really. You tell yourself it's temporary, just a few months to save some cash. Maybe figure things out. But time doesn't move normal in towns like Ridgway, Kansas. It stretches, it loops. And before you know it, years have slipped through your fingers like spilled coffee down a drain. My name's Caleb Turner, 27, and I've been working nights at Henderson's Gas and go for almost 4 years now. The job's simple. Ring up smokes, restock shelves, mop the floor, and try not to think too hard about where your life went sideways. The pay's lousy, the coffee's worse, and the only company you get after midnight is the sound of rain on the roof or the hum of the old beer cooler that never shuts up. Funny thing is, I used to think I'd get out of Ridgway. When I was 18, standing at graduation in that itchy black gown, I had plans. College or maybe the military. My dad wanted me to join up, said it would make me a man, but then he got sick lung cancer. By the time we caught it, it had already spread. My mom worked 2 jobs at the diner just to keep the lights on, so I stayed. Took whatever work I could find. First it was construction, then warehouse gigs, and eventually the night shift. Here Dad passed 2 winters later, Mom moved in with my aunt in Oklahoma, and I just never left. I guess some people get stuck because they don't have options. Others stay because leaving means admitting they wasted too much time hoping things would get better. That night, the one I can't forget, started like any other cold wind cutting across the highway, a gray sky leaking sleet. By the time I clocked in at 10 p.m., the roads were slick enough to make every passing truck sound like it was sliding toward the pumps. The store was quiet, just me and the smell of burnt coffee from the pot that's been older than I am. "Yo, Caleb," said Mitch, the guy from the evening shift, as he grabbed his jacket. "Storm's getting nasty. You sure you'll be all right?" I smirked. "Yeah, man." "What's the worst that happens? Somebody actually shows up?" He laughed. "Fair point. Lock the door if things get weird." You know the drill. He left, and the station fell back into silence. Just the hum of the lights, the rattle of wind against the windows, and the flicker of that half-dead, open 24 hours sign buzzing above the door. Midnight rolled around slow. I stocked chips, mopped up a spill by the soda machine, checked the receipt printer twice, even though no one had come in for over an hour. The storm outside had turned mean. Sleet turning into full-on snow. Flakes swirling in the parking lot like ghosts. Around 1:30 a.m., I was leaning on the counter, scrolling through my phone, when headlights cut across the glass. Bright, sharp. For a second, I thought I was imagining it. But then a car, dark gray, maybe black, rolled up to the pumps. It didn't stop at any of them, though. Just idled there, engine rumbling low. I waited. Nothing. No door opened. No one stepped out. Finally, I grabbed my jacket, stepped to the window, and peered out through the streaks of melting snow. The driver's side window was tinted almost black. The car wasn't new, maybe a late 90s model, but it was clean. Too clean for this weather. Then, as if the person inside had been waiting for me to notice, the engine cut off. The door creaked open. Out stepped a man, tall, maybe 6 foot, in a soaked gray hoodie. He moved slow, deliberate, head tilted down like he was trying to keep his face hidden. He didn't go to the pumps. He came straight for the door. The bell chimed. "Evening," I said, my voice breaking the silence. Nothing. He didn't even glance at me, just kept walking until he stopped in front of the coffee station. He stood there for a while, not pouring anything, not even reaching for a cup. Just standing. "You okay there, bud?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He finally turned. His face was pale under the fluorescent lights, eyes sunken, beard patchy and wet. He looked exhausted, or maybe empty. "Coffee," he muttered. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. It's fresh enough, I think." He filled a cup halfway. No sugar, no cream, just black. Then he walked up to the counter and set it down. "That'll be $1.50, I said, tapping the register. He reached into his pocket, and that's when I saw it, the handle of a gun. He didn't point it, not yet, just set it on the counter beside the coffee like it was an afterthought. My stomach dropped. "Open it," he said. I froze. "The register?" He nodded. Calm, way too calm. I fumbled for the key, my fingers slipping on the metal. The drawer popped open with that stupid, cheerful ding. That felt like an alarm. I started stuffing bills into a plastic bag, hands shaking. He didn't move, just stared. When I handed him the bag, he took it, but didn't leave. He tilted his head, eyes fixed on me. "You work here every night?" I swallowed hard. "Most nights." He nodded slowly, like that meant something to him, then almost whispering, "Do you ever think about how quiet it gets here?" "What?" He leaned closer. "It's the kind of quiet that remembers things." I didn't know what to say. My pulse was pounding in my ears. Then just like that, he grabbed the bag, turned, and walked out. The bell chimed again. The door shut. His car's headlights flared to life, then vanished into the snow. I stood there for a long time, breathing hard, my hands still hovering over the register. When I finally called 911, I could barely get the words out. The cops came 20 minutes later. One of them, Deputy Rhodes, asked me to describe the guy. I told him everything. Tall, gray hoodie, maybe late 30s. Calm, quiet. Rhodes sighed. "That's the third one this month. Same description. Always alone, always calm, always gone before we get there." I watched them review the security footage, grainy and stuttering from the cheap cameras. But when they rewound the tape, my heart nearly stopped. He wasn't there. The door chimed. I reacted, I talked to him, but on the screen the door opened and no one walked through. Just me, standing at the counter, talking to empty air. They thought I was in shock. Maybe the stress made me see things. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. The next night I came back to work. I told myself it was just the adrenaline, the storm, bad lighting. I almost believed it, until around 1:30 a.m., when the headlights flashed again. Same angle, same car. Only this time I never saw the door open. Just the bell, just the sound of wet shoes crossing the floor, and then that voice, quiet, steady, right beside my ear. "Do you ever think about how quiet it gets here?" The lights flickered. The cooler's hum stopped. The whole station went dark. When the power came back, the coffee pot was tipped over. The register was open, and there on the counter sat a single wet handprint. No car outside, no footprints, no nothing. They say ghosts are memories stuck in the wrong place, but this one, whatever it was, felt more like something that remembered me. And some nights when the wind hits just right and the sleet starts to fall, I swear I hear the bell again. Story 6, I never thought much about small-town America until I started driving through it alone. It's funny how empty the country feels when you're the only set of headlights on a 2-lane highway. My name's Daniel Price, 32 years old. I work as a field technician for a regional telecom company out of Oklahoma City. I'm the guy they send when something breaks down too far from the city for anyone else to care. Towers, relay boxes, remote lines, stuff most people don't even know exists. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. And after my divorce last year, I didn't have much tying me down anyway. That fall, I'd been assigned to check out a service outage up near Redwater, Kansas, a nothing town surrounded by more cornfields than people. My supervisor told me it'd take half a day. I figured I'd drive up, fix whatever needed fixing, grab a cheap motel, and head back in the morning. But of course, things never go that smooth. By the time I wrapped up the repair, the sun was gone. The wind had picked up, the temperature dropped fast, and all I wanted was a hot shower and sleep. My GPS showed a small highway cutting south that would take me back toward civilization faster than the interstate. Big mistake. About an hour into the drive, I noticed my fuel gauge dipping lower than I expected. I hadn't seen a station in miles. The last sign I remembered had said, "Next services, 48 miles." I cursed under my breath, gripping the wheel tighter. Real smart, Danny. Maybe plan next time. The road wound between tall stretches of corn, the stalks bending in the wind like restless figures. The moon was bright but low, painting everything silver and strange. The air had that heavy, electric stillness that comes before a storm. I checked my phone. No signal. Great. I turned the music down, trying to stay alert. But the longer I drove, the more the world blurred into monotony. Corn, blacktop, silence. My eyelids felt heavy. I took a sip of coffee from the thermos. Cold, bitter, useless. That's when I saw it. Faint at first, a weak glow in the distance. A flicker of neon on the horizon. At first, I thought it was a trick of the eyes. But as I got closer, the letters took shape. Redwater Fuel and Diner. The sign buzzed, one of the letters half dead, casting a pale pink light over the empty lot. Relief washed through me like a wave. Thank God, I muttered. The place looked ancient, like something left behind from the 70s. 2 old gas pumps stood out front, the kind with rotating numbers instead of digital screens. The diner was connected to the station, its windows fogged and dimly lit. A flicker of light moved behind the glass, like someone walking by. I pulled up, engine idling, and stepped out. The air was cool, carrying a faint metallic tang, like rust or old blood. I told myself it was just the smell of the pumps. The pump handle was cold to the touch. I slid my card in. The reader didn't respond. Tried again. Nothing. Of course, I muttered. That's when I heard a voice from behind me. "You're better off with cash." I jumped, nearly dropping the nozzle. A man stood a few feet away, half lit by the neon. He was tall, late 40s maybe, wearing a grease-stained mechanic's jacket. His hair was slicked back, and his smile was wrong, too wide, too fixed. "Sorry," I said, trying to sound casual. "Didn't hear you come out." He chuckled low. "Most don't. Card reader's been busted for years. Folks don't come through much anymore." I reached for my wallet. "I've got cash. Just need a fill-up." He nodded slow. "You'll get your gas. Come inside first. Register's still working." Every instinct told me no, but my tank was almost empty, and the nearest town was miles behind me. I forced a polite smile. "Sure. Yeah, no problem." He motioned for me to follow. The diner door creaked when he opened it. The smell hit me first. Old grease, mildew, and something faintly sour beneath it all. Inside, the lighting was dim. A few booths lined the windows, their vinyl seats torn and sun-faded. An old jukebox sat in the corner, humming faintly, though it wasn't playing anything. Behind the counter sat an older woman with long gray hair, smoking a cigarette that had long since burned down to ash. She looked up when I entered, eyes dull but sharp. The man said, "Got a traveler needs a top off." She nodded slowly, her voice rasping. "Ain't had one in a while." I forced a small laugh. "Guess I'm lucky you're open." The woman didn't smile. "Open? Closed. Don't make much difference." The words hung in the air like smoke. I pulled a 20 from my wallet and slid it across the counter. "Just regular, please." The man took it without looking. "Pump'll start now," he said, then leaning slightly closer. "You out here alone, son?" I hesitated. Yeah, work trip." He stared at me for a long moment, eyes reflecting the neon outside. I hesitated. Yeah, work trip." He stared at me for a long moment, eyes reflecting the neon outside. Lot of lonely roads out here. Easy to get lost. I nodded, trying not to show the chill running through me. Yeah, guess so. When I stepped back outside, the pump was already running. The numbers clicked slowly, each one sounding too loud in the empty air. I scanned the lot. No other cars. No sound but the wind whispering through the corn. I turned to glance back toward the diner. Through the window, I could see the woman standing now. Just standing, watching me. The man was nowhere in sight. Something about the stillness made my chest tighten. I forced myself to stay calm. Just finish and go. The pump clicked, signaling full. I replaced the nozzle, started toward my car. That's when I saw movement in my periphery, a flicker near the far edge of the lot. Something, or someone, was standing at the tree line. Tall, still, watching. I blinked. Gone. Get a grip, Danny, I whispered. You're just tired. I climbed in, started the car. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. I exhaled, hands gripping the wheel. Then I looked up and froze. The man was standing directly in front of my headlights. I hadn't seen him walk there. He was just there. His eyes gleamed pale in the beams. His lips were moving, but I couldn't hear a thing through the glass. I put the car in reverse, heart pounding. But as I backed up, I caught something in the mirror. Movement behind the car. Shapes, plural. People, figures, all standing in the dark just beyond the light. I couldn't see their faces, only outlines, still as tombstones. I slammed it into drive and floored it. Gravel sprayed behind me as I tore out of the lot, the car fishtailing slightly before finding the road. My heart hammered against my ribs. For a few seconds, I dared a glance in the mirror. The neon sign flickered once. Then, this part I still can't explain, it went out. Completely. The entire building vanished into blackness, like it had never been there at all. I didn't stop driving until I hit the main highway 2 hours later. Pulled into a 24-hour Shell station, light blazing like salvation. The clerk, a bored-looking kid, asked if I was okay. I must have looked pale as death. Long night, I muttered. I paid for more gas, used the restroom, washed my face in cold water until my hands stopped shaking. When I came back out, I noticed something on the passenger seat. A small paper receipt. Yellowed, grease-stained. The header read, Redwater Fuel and Diner. Route 46. But the date was wrong. October 12th, 1978. I reported the incident to my supervisor later that week, half joking about it, trying to make it sound like a weird coincidence. He frowned when I mentioned the place. Redwater Fuel? That place burned down years ago, he said. Whole family ran it. Tragic story. Travelers died there too, back in the day. Nobody's reopened it since I just stared at him. Maybe you saw some other station, he offered. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And sometimes when I'm driving those empty roads at night, I catch a faint pink glow in the distance. A neon sign, buzzing like it's calling my name. I never stop. Not anymore. Because some places on the map aren't really there anymore. And some lights aren't meant to guide you home. Story 7. I never thought I'd end up back in a town like Coldwater. Not after everything I'd done to get out. When you're a kid, small towns look like the whole world. Safe, familiar, ordinary. But the older you get, the more you start to notice the cracks. The boarded up storefronts, the whispers that travel faster than the wind, the way every streetlight hums just a little too loud on empty nights. My name's Ryan Mercer. I was 32 when it happened. At the time, I was working the night shift at a gas station off Route 219, right where the pines start to thin and the fog rolls down from the hills. The place was called Coldwater Fuel and Stop, but nobody called it that. Around here, it was just the station. It wasn't what I wanted to be doing with my life. I'd gone to school for journalism, believed in stories, truth, all that idealistic crap. But after my dad's accident, I moved back to take care of my mom. Bills piled up, and before I knew it, I was stuck behind a counter selling cigarettes, coffee, and scratch-offs at 2 a.m. to truckers who barely looked you in the eye. That winter, the cold was worse than I remembered. It crept into everything. Your lungs, your bones, even your thoughts. I'd show up around 9:45 p.m., stamp my boots on the mat, and relieve Tommy, the day clerk. He was maybe 20, baby-faced and always jittery like he'd had one too many energy drinks. "Long night?" I asked him once, shrugging off my coat. "They're all long nights here," he muttered, eyes flicking toward the window. I laughed. "That's the night shift for you." He didn't laugh back, just kept staring out at the pumps. "You'll see what I mean," he said quietly. Then, like he regretted saying it, he shook his head, grabbed his keys, and hurried out. I figured he was just being dramatic, but I started to notice things. Coldwater wasn't like other towns. It wasn't just small, it was hollow, like something had drained the life out of it. Half the houses on the north side were abandoned, windows boarded, yards overgrown. Even the radio would cut out when you drove through certain parts of town. Locals said it was the hills. I didn't buy that. The station itself was isolated, nothing but trees and the faint outline of the Rockies in the distance. My shift ran 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., what we called the ghost hours. Most nights followed the same rhythm. 10 to 12, truckers heading north to Missoula. 12 to 2, silence thick enough to hear your own pulse. 2 to 4, maybe a couple of locals grabbing smokes. 4 to 6, loggers and road workers on their way out. I'd make coffee, stock shelves, hum along to the radio just to fill the air. Anything to ignore the stillness pressing against the glass. It was late January, one of those nights where the wind sounded like it was trying to peel the siding off the building. I remember because that was the night I first saw him. It was 1:13 a.m. The cameras showed no cars for miles. I was wiping down the counter when I heard it. Gravel crunching. I looked up. Pump 9's motion light flicked on. Someone was standing there. At first I thought it was a customer, but the figure wasn't moving. Just standing between the pumps, head tilted slightly like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. "Can I help you?" I called through the glass, half joking. No reaction. He was tall, maybe 6'3", wearing a long brown coat that looked soaked from the snow. His hair hung in clumps around his face. The weirdest part? He didn't seem cold, just still. After a few seconds, I turned to check the security feed. The camera flickered, glitched, and then nothing. Just static. When I looked back through the window, he was gone. I stepped out from behind the counter, my pulse quickening. The lot was empty. Snow had started to fall again, soft and soundless. I told myself it was just a trick of the light, maybe a driver who decided not to stop. But then around 2:30, the power cut out. Everything went black. The lights, the pumps, even the radio. Only the emergency light above the door glowed faintly red. I grabbed the flashlight from under the counter, my breath fogging in the cold. And that's when I heard it. A soft knock. Not on the front door, from the back. I froze. The back door was locked, always locked. The knock came again. 3 slow taps. "Hello?" I called out, voice shaking. "Tommy, is that you?" No answer. I stepped closer, the beam of my flashlight trembling. The knock stopped. Then from the other side of the door, a voice, low and strained, like it was coming through water. "Bathroom." The same word over and over, each repetition a little louder. "Bathroom." I backed away, heart hammering. That voice, it was the same tone, the same flat cadence as the man I'd seen outside earlier. I turned the bolt on the door, just to be sure. And then, nothing. Silence again. For what felt like hours, I stood there, waiting for something to happen. Finally, the lights flickered back on, the hum of the refrigerators returning. Like a heartbeat restarting. The next morning, when Tommy came in to relieve me, I told him what happened. He went pale. "You saw him," he whispered. "Saw who?" He swallowed. "The man at pump 9. I laughed, though it came out thin. "You're joking." But he wasn't smiling. He told me that years ago, before I started, a guy froze to death out there. Middle of winter. His car broke down by pump 9. They said he went looking for help, but the cold got him first. Ever since, people said he shows up during storms, asking to use the bathroom. I told him it was just small-town nonsense. But that night, when the power went out again, same hour, same silence, I didn't believe that anymore. This time, I didn't wait by the door. I locked the office, shut off the lights, and crouched behind the counter, with my phone ready to dial 911. For 20 minutes, I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then I heard it again. Not a knock, a scrape. Metal against metal. I risked a glance at the monitor. The feed flickered, then came back just long enough to show a figure standing at pump 9. The man in the coat, staring right at the camera. The feed cut to static. I called 911. The dispatcher, her name was Lynn, kept me on the line until a sheriff's car pulled up around 3. Deputy Grant Harlow stepped out, light bouncing off his badge. He searched the lot, checked the pumps, circled the back. Nothing. "No footprints," he said, frowning. "You sure someone was out here?" I wanted to sound confident, but my throat was dry. "He was right there." "I saw him," Harlow nodded slowly. "You know how cold gets to people around here. Makes them see things, hear things." He drove off, leaving me, alone again in the flickering glow of the neon sign. The following night, I didn't want to go back. But rent was rent. The clock struck 1:10 a.m. The power flickered, and from outside, through the static hum of the wind, I heard it again. Bathroom. Only this time it wasn't coming from the back door. It was coming from inside the store. I turned slowly, flashlight shaking in my hand. The aisle lights were out, but in the faint red emergency glow, I could make out a wet trail across the floor, like someone had walked through snow that wasn't melting. The trail led straight to the employee bathroom door, the one that was supposed to be locked. I reached for my keys, my breath shallow. The air was freezing, the hum of the refrigerators fading again. And then, something knocked from inside the bathroom. 3 slow taps. The handle began to turn. I bolted, ran straight out the front door into the snow, didn't stop until I saw the first hint of dawn creeping over the horizon. When I came back later that morning with the sheriff, the door was wide open. Inside, the walls were dripping with condensation, and in the mirror, written with a fingertip, was one word: bathroom. They shut down the station that week, said it was bad wiring, black mold, safety hazards. But I know better. I left Coldwater the next day and never went back. Still, some nights when the power flickers or I hear pipes knocking in the walls, I remember that voice, low, broken, always asking for the same thing. And sometimes when I drive past an empty gas station, I can't help but glance toward the farthest pump. Because part of me knows he's still out there, waiting, watching. Friends, be sure to tell in the comments which story you like the most, and don't forget to subscribe and like.